All right, to discuss further, joining us right now is independent aviation analyst Brandon Sobie on the line. Brandon, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this time. First of all, what specific factors, have contributed to Malaysia Airlines reaching its breaking point currently, particularly in comparison to other airlines facing similar industry-wide challenges?
Yeah, so I think that, there's been a whole escalation of factors over the last several months that led to this issue. I refer to it as the breaking point on CNBC on Monday, and I think Malaysian media picked up the quote, but it didn't actually repeat the entire context of that interview. So to explain a little bit further, Malaysia Airlines, as many airlines have been facing for the last really 2 years since the reopening of borders, there's been a lot of manpower issues, supply chain issues, aircraft part shortage, and also aircraft delivery delays. And they've been battling these challenges for quite some time. But the situation basically got worse, particularly over the last few months. Malaysia Airlines has had to extend a lot of their older aircraft beyond what they thought they would be operating because of the delivery delays and other issues. What that does is it means that they're operating older aircraft, but also the utilization has been very high because they've had some maintenance issues, delays in reactivating aircraft, or delays in maintaining and putting aircraft back into service after repairs. So in order to compensate and keep up their schedule, they've had to really push the aircraft that they have remaining in their fleet even harder, increasing the utilization. And these are older aircraft and aircraft that unfortunately started breaking more, they had an escalation in terms of the number of AOGs, which is aircraft on the ground, or what is unscheduled maintenance. So you have scheduled maintenance, and then you have unscheduled maintenance, and a lot of incidences, a lot of issues kept on happening, where you had led to more unscheduled maintenance, more aircraft on the ground. They didn't have any spares, and they kept on pushing the utilization of what they had left. And that's this kind of escalation, unfortunately, led to this kind of breaking point where you had even more issues, more aircraft on the ground, and it just got to the point where they couldn't maintain their schedules anymore.
Brandon, given the decline in on-time performance (OTP) for Malaysia Airlines, what internal strategies were employed to manage this decline, and do you think they were sufficient?
Well, they were really working hard to improve their on-time performance. Last year, 2023, Malaysia Airlines had an on-time performance of only 73%, and this was reported in their 2023 results. And they knew this is not a good enough number, and they were working during the year, to try to improve it. And there were many factors. It was not only aircraft maintenance, and part shortages and delivery delays, and so forth. There was also, I would say, manpower issues with their operations. And Captain Nizam, he's a very experienced, CEO from an operational perspective, because he's a former pilot and has a lot of background on the operations side. And this OTP issue was first and foremost, his kind of priority. But one man can't necessarily change everything, and there's so many internal issues at Malaysia Airlines, long-term issues, with the culture of the company, as well as short-term issues, short-term factors that we were discussing, and unfortunately, the OTP or on-time performance didn't really improve this year. In fact, in recent months, it got worse, and in the month of July, based on the latest MAVCOM figures, the overall, Malaysia Airlines on-time performance was about 60%. It was in fact, less than 60% in international operation. But to be fair, Batik Malaysia was also under 60% with their international operation, and AirAsia was only like 66%. So this is an issue that actually has been impacting all Malaysia carriers in recent months, in particular, with too many aircraft on the ground, not sufficient spares, and Malaysian carriers are generally behind, carriers in other parts of the world or in other countries, even in this region, that have been battling the same issues.
And Brendan, if you look at Malaysia Aviation Group (MAG), has announced a reduction in flights and also routes as a corrective measure. How do you assess the long-term impact of this strategy on Malaysia Airlines' market competitiveness?
This is a short-term move, so it shouldn't necessarily impact their long-term competitiveness or their long-term position. And consumers, I think, initially, maybe a bit wary of booking on Malaysia Airlines because of all this, bad publicity and all these cuts, and they think that the schedules are uncertain and the flights they book won't fly. But I actually think it's a little bit of the opposite in reality, in that because they've made these massive capacity cuts and taken a step back, what they are now scheduling is realistic, and they shouldn't have so many issues. So I think their schedule over the next few months, at the reduced level of 20% roughly overall, more domestic than international. There should be some confidence in that schedule, and eventually, that most of these issues are short-term, although there are some long-term systemic, deep-rooted issues in Malaysia Airlines that need to be addressed as well. But most of the kind of operational issues are, that they've been facing can be resolved in the next few months as they, get the aircraft back into service, as this queue of aircraft that are now, waiting for maintenance or spare parts or even manpower, because there's a shortage of manpower in terms of skilled mechanics and so forth. Once that kind of logjam is eased, they'll be able to add more flights back in, hopefully by end of this year or early next year. And hopefully the confidence will come back, and hopefully the on-time performance will improve, and Malaysian consumers will be able to trust the airline more. And so it should be short term, particularly if these measures, which are drastic but necessary, are implemented sufficiently and executed, which I think they will be, and the airline will be on better footing next year.
Talking about the maintenance and also getting more spare parts in the market, some experts suggested that airlines should adopt an astute predictive maintenance model in collaboration with the OEMs. What specific steps could Malaysia Airlines, for instance, take to improve its predictive maintenance capabilities?
Well, I mean, this also requires a bit of transformation by the company, cultural perspective. The employees have to adapt to this kind of new way of working. Predictive maintenance has there's been a lot of, I guess, advancements recently in recent years, and a lot of airlines haven't adapted these fully yet. It's not only Malaysia Airlines, it's other airlines in the region. But of course, there are some, industry-leading airlines that you can learn from. And I think over time, Malaysia Airlines and other airlines in the region will gradually adopt some of these practices. But it takes time, and it takes a lot of work internally, particularly given, a lot of Malaysia Airlines issues right now are they have so many short-term issues. With lack of manpower and other issues that they have to kind of focus on the more immediate issues. And over time, I think they will adapt some of the best practices that are now out there in the industry, and over time their maintenance operation hopefully will improve, but it just will take quite some time.
Brendan, how should the Malaysian government balance its role between providing support to Malaysia Airlines and ensuring the airline's management remains accountable for its operational decisions?
Yeah, I mean, this is always a hard question. The Malaysia Airlines situation is very sensitive. There's a lot of people a lot of Malaysians obviously are sentimental about Malaysia Airlines, and the government is always very proactive or very involved, because it's such an important sector, the airline industry, to the overall economy. But Malaysia Airlines has to operate as a commercial entity, and it has been, it was profitable last year. It's done quite well financially post-pandemic. It has a very good financial position at the moment because the recapitalization that happened during the pandemic, most of that capital wasn't actually used because they've been profitable. So there has to be some kind of understanding that the airline has to be run commercially and without government intervention necessarily. But at the same time, the government needs to take a bigger picture look at Malaysia Airlines as well as the overall ecosystem and the overall industry. Now, there's been some calls for a blue ribbon commission to be formed, and I would agree with that. That would be a very positive step for Malaysia for the government to form this kind of independent commission to look at what has happened specifically at Malaysia Airlines so that it doesn't happen again, and to look at the governance and the structure of the overall industry, the policies that are in place, the regulatory environment, which is also really understandably came under fire, particularly with the My Airline collapse last year. So it's there needs to be a reset, overall. There needs to be a relook to ensure the overall viability and health of the Malaysian airline sector, not just Malaysia Airlines Group.